Oh, after disaster kept Ezekiel going, comforted by knowing deity's plans. Then his heart took a fall when he got the call. Darren was taken, though his faith was shaken.
Given the great love deity has for Estolians, it is sometimes hard to understand the rigidity of the strictures under which Estolians live. There is no hell as is understood in many other religions, nor is there heaven. But in the life after this life, Torizon, the only desirable outcome is to spend that time with the person you love. To contemplate existence with the one you love by your side, until time ceases to be time, is to envision paradise. And it is seen as the death of the soul for any man to face Torizon alone. Perhaps that is why, when given the choice, Estolian men would rather risk their soul in this life than live alone and lonely for the rest of eternity. Lazarus Ricardan Zakarian, Capitulo 84.
Zeke climbed out of the smallest corporate jet and waved briefly to the pilot. After the jet taxied and lifted off again, Zeke limped over to the horse being held by an acolyte. With a grateful nod, he mounted it and galloped for the temple. After the first mile, he slowed the horse to a trot. If the 10 to 15 minutes he might save by riding the animal into the ground were that critical, he was already too late. While he rode around the shoulder of Mount Estoliana, Zeke cursed the lack of options left open to him. In less than 8 hours he would be 31. He was told Kadarin was exhausted and sleeping in the seclusion suite. He would stop in to see his uncle and then proceed to join her. Since his accident 3 weeks before he turned 30, he spent a lot of time reading and rereading the 4 most pivotal blessings in his life. His Bender Nasara and his Bender Laura were nearly identical, word for word. When his brother became king, and he took on the role of first consul, his uncle's words were more specific. Most profound, however, was the blessing he received when he became his brother's last resort, his Bender Straya. Even with the hints that he would encounter some obstacle, some impediment keeping him from gifting his soul to Darin, the reality might be laughable, if his entire future happiness was not on the line thanks to Brittany's father, Joseph de Volos. In the last 20 days, Zeke learned more than he wanted to know about the ex-Estolian. When Joseph was 22, he abruptly quit the acolyte program and moved to Barcelona. Shortly thereafter, he ignored the promises of deity and married the daughter of an American millionaire. From all he could find on the subject, Joseph and his wife were happy together, and 6 months after the marriage she gave birth to Brittany. Joseph worked with his father-in-law and rapidly became indispensable to him. When Brittany was 5 years old, her mother and grandfather were involved in an accident. Her grandfather was killed instantly, and 12 days later, her mother also succumbed to her injuries. This left Joseph with a burgeoning company, millions in assets and cash on hand, and one bereaved child whose world was shattered. He devoted himself to only 2 pursuits: raising his daughter and making his father-in-law's company as lucrative as possible. He never found another woman to love, and became obsessed with granting his daughter anything and everything she ever wanted. But his focus became twisted and entwined with his half-completed religious education. He was convinced his daughter should marry an Estolian and devoted more and more of his energy towards that goal. His company did business with Zakarian Industries in California, and when she was 20, he got Brittany a job working at the San Francisco headquarters of the American division. How he had fixated on Zeke for his daughter was something only he could answer. But when he did become obsessed, he was willing to use his wealth to see his daughter married to the keeper, by fair means or foul. Meanwhile, his goal for his daughter to marry an Estolian did come true. When she met and married Marcus Albans, he was just the wrong Estolian. None of this mattered, Zeke thought to himself, except the material result of Joseph's insane interference was that Zeke would not have the chance to get to know Kadarin or have any sort of leisurely seduction. His pathway was clear. There would be no time to explain, no chance to get to know her gradually. He had to go to her, as exhausted and distressed as she was from nearly 3 weeks of being a hostage, and storm her defenses, woo her with his body, obtain her consent, and gift her his soul before midnight. As keeper, he would be in place to advise many young men in their romantic decisions. He would never encourage any Estolian to choose the pathway that he, Zeke, was now forced to take, for fear of the very real consequences of rejection. Joseph de Volos had taken away Zeke's choices. If he did not consummate the union before midnight, he would have to resign as first consul, and last resort, and live his life celibate. No, he had to have faith in the blessings he received and pray deity would guide him so that the woman who was already more precious to him than life itself might accept him and keep his soul safe. When he arrived at the entrance to the temple, another acolyte was waiting to take his horse. He dismounted and took the stairs as quickly as his lame leg allowed. He was grateful for the acolytes. They were aware of the drama playing out, another exciting capitulo being written right before their eyes. He nodded to those who opened the doors of the temple, and to the one who opened his uncle's office door. Only his uncle was inside. While one might argue this was something that needed the entire Strelleron in attendance, to Zeke it was important only to two men, the current keeper and his successor. Theo waved him to his normal seat. Zeke sat, and took a deep breath. Theo waited while he regained his composure, before his expression grew solemn.
She arrived about 2 hours ago. She is asleep. We will hold a small ceremony in the morning. I have no additional guidance to give you beyond the blessing you received when you became the last resort. Gregorio and Wraith are willing to step forward. They would, however, prefer to remain in their current roles rather than occupy yours.
Taking a deep breath, Zeke shared.
I believe, Uncle, that deity has never spoken to me in such a profound voice as it did when I first saw Kederin Cicero. I thought someone had a mirror and was reflecting the sun in my eyes. But it was just those endearing orange curls, bathed in the extraordinary vision of her aura like tongues of flame surrounding her but not burning her.
He paused, frustrated at the inadequacy of the language to properly convey how he felt. After searching for a better way to express himself, he shook his head, giving up. Instead, he said,
She is the one whom deity has proclaimed will keep my soul. Our trials will bring us greater strength. We have an ever-changing world with challenges that will require the strength of character I see in Kederin. Thank you for your unswerving support. You have made me the man I am now. You taught me to see into the heart and soul of others, and yet, Uncle, I don't think any keeper has seen within another in the way I saw Kederin. Deity is with us.
Theo came around the desk. The two men grasped each other's forearms. Zeke could sense within his uncle that he was ready to yield up his power to the next generation, ready for the end of the transition. He was prepared for the closing festivities that would culminate in the 7-day blessing that Ben Danasara, that Zeke and Kay Darren's first child would receive. Zeke left his uncle's office and passed through the ceremony room. Acolytes were opening doors they were not even assigned to open. He grinned at them in passing. Acolytes were always fascinated when two souls united outside the expected norms. Reading about the exciting exploits of their ancestors in the Capitolos was not as fascinating as seeing the drama play itself out. He was grateful to see his cousin rather than an acolyte manning the doors to the seclusion suite.
Please fulfill your destiny,
Gregorio said. Zeke thumped his cousin on the back, and then slipped into the seclusion suite. It was mostly dark, with the tapestries cutting out the light of the lowering sun shining into the garden crevasse between the greater and lesser peaks of Mount Estoliana. He paused to take a deep breath, thinking about the past 21 days fighting to assure this day would happen. He would proceed with only his gut, heart, and mind, along with the urgings of deity. He pulled his clothing off, folding it neatly. Once he was naked, he paused to spend one final minute communing with deity. He felt great peace and a solid sense of purpose. This might not be the typical pathway, nor the advisable one, but it was the right one for him, and for the woman asleep in the other room. He pushed the tapestry aside, so he could slip into the bedchamber. The light from the bathroom shone on the freckled face and curly orange hair of the woman who held the key to his soul. Her nightgown was crumpled up on the floor. He paused to thank deity for urging her to remove it in her sleep, before he lifted the covers and slipped beneath them.
Oh, after disaster kept Ezekiel going, comforted by knowing deity's plans. How could she be taken, stolen, removed, leaving him forsaken, after deity approved, with the owner's confirmation, she's his soul's destination.